Arkansas River keeps its own council. Brown water folds around sandbars, willows whisper to each other in a grammar older than maps. In that country a child is born 1838 by some ledgers, Crawford County by others. Bass, a name short enough to ride and strong enough to lift. He arrives into bondage, into a world arranged by other men's signatures. Chores measured in sunrise and permission. Tools pass hand to hand with the care a person gives another person as property. When he is the property, growing is a quiet business when a boy understands that silence is safer than the noise. He feels inside his bones. He learns hands how to mend a harness until leather stops remembering where it tore. How to read a horse's ears and a mule's opinions. How to listen for weather and the break between a bird's to notes. The frontier teaches languages by necessity, Creek, Cherokee, and Seminole camps are neighbors more permanent than fences. Bass learns words the way some men learn songs at fires, at trading posts, at river crossings where a shared rope makes grammar simpler, or comes walking in other men's boots. A master points the way south and calls it duty. Camps move. Flags talk at each other across fields. Bass keeps learning even while the world unlearns peace. There is a story about a card game and a fist and the sudden knowledge that a man's life is larger than the roan he is in. Whether the story happened exactly as told is less important than the fact that Bass left night, river, Indian territory opening like a door he had earned. Among the nations he is not a stranger for long. He hunts with hunters who judge a man by how he lifts meat and carries it home. He learns to say thank you in more than one language and to show it in the universal one work. He marries. He plants things that answer back with food. He makes a house that remembers laughter. When emancipation arrives, it is not a trumpet for everyone. For some, it is a letter that took too long. For Bass, it is a confirmation of a decision he has already been making. With each mile walked free, he is not loud. He is exact. His rifle is a promise kept only when no other promise will hold. His hands are steady enough to split a playing card with a shot, and gentle enough to settle a skittish colt without reminding it who is stronger. There's news from back east of a judge. With a wide docket and a wider reputation, Fort Smith, Indian Territory. Bench that needs men to make the paper mean something between the lines. Bass listens. He rolls the thought like a cartridge between finger and thumb. He does not say yes quickly. He understands that a badge is not decoration. It is a contract with the night. In the small hours he imagines walking into camps where men will prefer their own explanations. He imagines speaking to them in the tones of their mothers and the tenses of the weather, asking for surrender without insult and offering a ride back that costs less than a shot would. He says yes. He is measured for a star. He prays in his own way, which is to say he checks his tack twice and kisses his wife's ass forehead and tells his children that he will bring stories home if stories behave. The Deputy U.S., Marshal of Indian Territory, bench nicknamed hanging by newspapers that enjoy headlines. Warrants that smell like fresh ink and rain. A horse that will learn the way to Fort Smith and back by heart. The star sits easy on Bass's vest, not because it is light, but because he knows how to carry weight without making it wobble. Judge Parker's court issues paper that turns into miles. Deputy Marshals fan out white, black, mixed blood, a ledger of names more varied than the newspapers remember later. Bass rides with the writs tucked where rain can't find them. Each name is a conversation waiting to be had. Each path is a sentence that can end in period or question mark, or silence if a man insists on being a bad editor of his own day. He does not hurry into camps. He arrives as if he were expected. He talks before he does arithmetic. He lets a man save a part of his face if that will save the man's life. When talk fails, he is exact. He moves with the economy learned from men who do not waste cartridges or adjectives. If a shot must be fired, it is fired once. He writes the report without drama and with enough detail that the paper can bear the weight of. What happened? Stories grow around him like shade trees. That he once handcuffed two men while pretending to be a weary traveler and cooked them breakfast. Before revealing their risks were already agreed with the law. That he walked into a cabin wearing a farmer's hat and a patient frown, and walked out with the wanted man, everyone's dignity mostly intact. That he could track a tired horse by the way its prince apologized to the mud. He uses disguises not to trick for sport but to ask danger to show itself on terms that end with all the living still living. A brim pulled low, a coat a touch too big, A limp that asks for a chair near the fire where the door is, so that when the door opens the conversation is already close to finished. He rides in all weathers. Ice on the river makes the horse think twice and pass only once. Summer dust turns his coat into the color of the day and he lets it. Night adds miles where paperwork subtracts them. He works with possemen who learn what silence is for. He teaches with a lifted chin rather than a lifted finger. He pays informants fairly and does not spend their names in saloons where whiskey listens. Violence happens. He does not invite it, but it arrives with eyes he does not recognize as negotiable. He meets it with the accuracy a good life deserves. 14 men by one count fall to his defense over decades. Fewer by others. Whatever the number, Bass sleeps with the knowledge that alternatives were offered first. He brings in thousands alive. He pairs iron with conversation and finds that conversation weighs less and carries farther. The nations are large and the work is larger, but the ledger grows on the good side of the page because a man who knows 3 languages of peace and 1 of war prefers to speak the first 3. In Fort Smith, the jail smells like men remembering their manners. The clerk learns to leave extra space in the book on days Bass rides in because paper runs short when a man keeps his promises so often. He does not drink. He does not boast. He plays a little fiddle for children in camps where the law has shaken tents and then made them still again. He sends home money and stories in the same envelope. Some paper elsewhere prints the word legend. Bass does not see it that week. He is out past Weber's Falls at a crossing where the water is speaking quick and a warrant is speaking quicker. Hard cases and the cost of being fair. A door opens to a kitchen where supper is half done and a man chooses to come in. Without being asked twice, a son's name on a warrant. A badge that weighs what it says it weighs. Some arrests become stories. Some become lodestones in a man's pocket. There's a kitchen door in a cabin somewhere near the bend in a small river. Bass knocks with the back of his knuckles. Way a neighbor does. Inside, a wanted man pauses at the sound the way a rabbit pauses at a hawk's shadow. Bass enters hat in hand, words first. He smells beans and wood smoke and hears a child breathing in another room. He pitches his voice for quiet ears, names, papers. The offer of cuffs that do not bite if a man will not. The man looks at the floor, at the window, at the space beside Bass and the space behind himself. His shoulders let go. He nods. Day folds without blood. Another time he sits at a table for hours holding a conversation with a door waiting for it to admit someone who thinks night is taller than law. When the latch lifts, Bass lifts too, and the conversation ends as if it had been friendly all along. And then there is the warrant with a family name, his son. A bad night, a wife fallen, anger that imagined itself aloud. The paper does not tremble because paper never does. Bass's hand does not either. Because a badge does not weigh less when it leans toward a house, you know. He saddles quietly. He prays in his way that the day will be honest. At the door his son sees his father and a marshal. Both are true. Bass cuffs him with the same gentleness he offers strangers who do not argue and the same firmness he offers strangers who do. He escorts him to the place where days are counted by rules and then visits as a father visits. When visiting is all that is permitted, the community watches the scene from many angles. Some find it harsh, some find it holy. Bass does not invite votes. He sleeps that night with the slow breath of a man who has paid the price the job asked, and did not borrow more for show. Hard cases multiply because the territory is busy with men who do not like to be told things. Bass meets them with a patience that makes itself felt before it is seen. He ties his horse where a man can watch the knot and understand it is not an insult but a forecast. He does not rush a breach, he knocks. He calls a name in the language that name was given in and waits to be answered like a man waiting. At his own table, when bullets come anyway, he returns them to the senders in the shortest route available. Report writing afterward is a kind of mercy, clean sentences, no embroidery. Respect paid to facts because facts are the only thing a widow can stand to read. Without feeling swindled, ears make their own weather in a body, dust writes in lungs, saddles right in backs. But Bass keeps his seat in its center. He prays with deeds, which is the religion the road. Understands, he teaches younger possemen the arithmetic of range. How far a man can run after adrenaline leaves and regret arrives. How much water a prisoner needs to drink to make the trip home. Feel like a promise kept by both sides. How a look can say yes faster than a pistol can say no. Statehood, a new beat, and the long fade of a tall horse. Territory becomes state. Federal papers change their letterhead. Veteran with a star takes the city post where boots wear out slower, but hearts sometimes do not. Oklahoma steps into statehood wearing a suit that will need tailoring. Courts rearrange themselves like furniture after a move. Deputy marshals lose a home and find jobs in new rooms. Bass does not retire into a rocking chair as myth would have him do. He becomes a policeman in Muskogee, a beat, a nightstick where a Winchester used to ride, the same eyes. City work is a different conversation with trouble, less distance, more repetition. Names on corners instead of creeks. He moves through streets lit by lamps that imagine themselves reliable. He tips his hat to shopkeepers who remember being afraid of dust storms and are now afraid of taxes. He guides drunks home with the dignity allowed in a town that wants to be won. He separates quarrels with the understanding that some men only need a minute to discover they were wrong. Youths test him and find him not yet a relic. He turns hands that thought they were fists into hands that are again pockets. He turns arguments into errands. Go fetch your mother, go fetch your boss, go fetch your better sense and bring it back before morning. Illness begins to make appointments he cannot ignore, sugar in the blood that sweetens nothing. Legs that ask for chairs earlier in the day, he concedes enough to keep working well and no more. Colleagues half his age watch him and adjust their own spines. They learn that authority does not. Apt to shout and that courtesy can carry a night farther than swagger. He hangs the belt up when his body insists. He does it without speeches, which is how he did most things. He keeps a chair by a window and watches weather return to its appointed rounds. Children and grandchildren hear stories that do not boast and learn to read the spaces between sentences for the parts a man chooses not to throw like shade at his own past. In 1910, breath slows. The room learns to be still. The window keeps doing its work of bringing the outside in. Bass Reeves' day ends the way his days began, with attention paid and noise kept to what was necessary. Legend, ledger, and the transfer of the road. What remains when the horse is unsaddled for good? What rumors do with a name? What the law keeps when it learns to honor someone quieter than his headlines? Where good life ends, rooms keep a little of the voice that used to speak there. A head hangs on a peg with more purpose than the wood can explain. A badge in a drawer behaves itself. The papers add him to their long ledgers, the obituaries that measure a republic's memory. He fills more columns than men who shouted louder. He earns lines that speak of thousands arrested. Of a handful killed only when necessity performed its stubborn duty. A man who did not drink his courage but banked it. Stories argue afterward about the Lone Ranger, whether some popular mask borrowed its shape from a black deputy who rode without one. Some say yes and list the similarities like beads. Some say the beads do not make a rosary. Bass, who never asked for applause to be accurate, would likely smile and let storytellers enjoy their work if it brought respect for real deeds. What is sure is this: he proved a badge can fit any man who pays for it with stamina and fairness. He proved language can be a bridge wide enough for a fugitive to walk back over. He proved that the best kind of fear a lawman inspires is the fear of disappointing a decent man. In Fort Smith and Muskogee and a dozen smaller places where ledger ink ran before rivers did, his name sits easy on tongues now. Statues appear in parks that learn to spell his last name with pride. Schools tell children that heroes can be quiet. For our long ASMR road, Bass is a wide, calm mile. He slows the cadence after gunfighter headlines. He prepares the air for a different register of noise. The clatter of a train, the Pinkerton's telegraph clicks. Rhythm of hooves beside rails where men like Jesse James tested timetables for weaknesses. From here we turn to a figure who read Reconstruction as an insult and made the railroads pay for it. In a currency he called justice and others called theft. His name rode newspapers even when he didn't ride that day. His legend learned to rob with a flourish and a mask of its own. Jesse James' brother. Guerrilla before he was a robber. Headline before he was a history lesson. Let your breath stay slow. We will not give him more music than he deserves, but we will put him in the procession where he belongs after a lawman whose shadow falls long and useful across the page.